Lin Manuel-Miranda has been in the news lately, and that's caused a revival of conspiracy theories about the artist. First, some necessary context. Puerto Rico has been in an economic depression since 2006. As the economy got worse on the island, the local government borrowed more and more money to cover the loss of tax revenue. By 2015, Puerto Rico had accumulated over $70 billion in debt, and as a result was spending almost 14% of the budget on debt service, more than what the government was spending on healthcare that year. So what does the guy who wrote Hamilton have to do with this? The main source of these conspiracy theories seems to be an article in the online magazine Remezcla titled A Breakdown of the Controversy Surrounding Lin Manuel-Miranda and Hamilton in Puerto Rico. In it, the author writes, quote, Miranda's very public support of the Puerto Rico Oversight Management and Economic Stability Act, PROMESA, the 2016 federal law touted as a means of debt relief, which brought with it a fiscal oversight board comprised of 7 U.S. appointed, therefore not elected by Puerto Ricans, members that since its implementation has issued budget-reducing austerity measures, figures heavily in the opposition's complaints. However, if you hover over the text, you see the author doesn't link to any sources to substantiate this version of events. So what actually happened in 2016, and did Lin Manuel actually publicly support PROMESA as the author alleges and online critics of Manuel-Miranda claim? In 2014, Puerto Rico attempted to reduce its debt by passing a local law. That law was struck down in February 2015 by a federal court because in the United States, bankruptcy is a federal issue. So in order for Puerto Rico to reduce its debt liabilities, Congress would need to pass a federal law. This is where Lin Manuel-Miranda enters the picture. In March 2016, Lin writes an op-ed in the New York Times, which I will link in the description, explaining the dire situation that Puerto Rico was facing, that schools had been closed and hospitals had to make severe cuts due to the budget crisis, and asked Congress to give Puerto Rico, and this is a direct quote, the ability to restructure its debt. Over time, Lin's calls for debt relief got twisted online by bloggers and social media into advocacy for PROMESA or austerity measures or neoliberalism. But let's look at the timeline. The problem with this story is that when Lin wrote his op-ed in March 2016, PROMESA did not exist. The bill that would eventually become PROMESA was introduced in May 2016 by Representative Rob Bishop, a Republican from Utah, almost 2 months after Lin's op-ed. Final version of the bill, which contained the Oversight Board, which is the main source of controversy in this story, wasn't introduced until May 19th as part of a deal between House Republicans, Democrats, and the then Obama White House. So no, Lin did not support PROMESA. Did he ask Congress to let Puerto Rico reduce its debt load? Yes, and so did elected politicians from Puerto Rico who at the time were lobbying Congress to do the same. Is it fair to blame Lin for how Congress wrote the bill? In my opinion, absolutely not. The responsibility lies with the legislators that wrote the bill. Is Lin a Sith Lord who controls the U.S. Congress and manipulated them into passing a law that harmed Puerto Rico? Absolutely not. Is Lin's best role the uncredited soldier cameo from The Rise of Skywalker? Yes.